Friday night, the government fired 700 CDC workers, disease detectives, people who track outbreaks. Sunday evening, those same workers got an email saying your termination was an error. It was a coding error. You still have a job. A coding error. 700 people spent the entire weekend thinking that they lost their jobs. They were in a whole bunch of panic. And on Sunday night, they said, just kidding. Just imagine spending your weekend just like that. They're concerned about not getting paid. They're concerned about not getting their benefits. Here's the career lesson here. Your employer can fire you by accident. They could then rehire you 2 days later and call it normal. 700 CDC workers spent the entire weekend updating their resumes, calling family, panicking about mortgages. Sunday night, just kidding, coding error. You cannot depend on systems that fire you by accident. And you definitely can't depend on systems that might fire you on purpose next week. 4,200 workers, Friday night, 7 agencies. And here's the thing, more is coming. If the government can fire disease detectives by coding error and gut special education offices on purpose and warn that deeper cuts are coming, what makes you think your job is safe? That's what's going on. I'm going to show you guys the news. Check this out.
The White House Budget Office says mass firings of federal workers have started because of the shutdown. At the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention in DeKalb County, a court filing obtained by CNN shows notices of staff reduction went out yesterday to workers at 10 offices. The Department of Health and Human Services was one of the departments that saw the highest amount of layoffs. The U.S. Senate once again failed to pass a bill to reopen the government. So let's get the very latest now with Atlanta News First Washington, D.C. correspondent Ryan Henson. Ryan, so does it seem like there is any progress being made?
Megan, I'm starting to feel like a broken record. Both sides pretty entrenched on where they stand right now. Now, the House passed a spending bill. It's been in the Senate, like you said. It's failed multiple times. That's where things have stalled out lately. They need 60 senators to sign off on that bill or a spending bill. Right now, they're at 54. While the House, they're not really involved in what's going on. The House GOP isn't even in town. They haven't been for the duration of the shutdown. Leaders definitely participating in the blame game. Here's a little bit of that right here.
We sent over this clean document. We didn't load it up with any partisan priorities because we're not playing games here. We wanted to keep the lights on so that we can continue the appropriations process.
Donald Trump can find the time to play golf, but he can't be bothered negotiating a bipartisan agreement to reopen the government.
So here's the deal. Republicans, they're saying, hey, we want 7 more weeks of the same spending levels as it was right before the government shutdown. That'll take us through mid-November. Give us that. We can have time for more negotiations. So
you guys are hearing it. Both sides are blaming each other for the government shutdown. CDC workers, 1,300 getting the pink slip, 700 saying it's rescinded. Insane weekend. Just imagine spending your weekend that way. But it's bigger than the CDC. Let them continue on.
Basically, vote now, talk later. Democrats are saying the opposite. They're saying, hey, we had a spending agreement last year. There were several rescissions where you guys took money away or changed things up. We went along with that for the now. That happened since Donald Trump came into office. But they're saying, we don't trust you to keep your word if we make an agreement. But most importantly, they're saying we need guarantees on health care. They want to talk now, then vote after that. So both sides saying the opposite of right there, and both sides pretty entrenched on where they're at. Like I said, they need 60 senators right now. They're at 54.
And Ryan, what are you learning about federal workers losing their jobs?
Well, the White House definitely had said they were going to start some of those mass layoffs last week, and we saw some of that the past couple of days. At least 4,000 people have lost their jobs. That's according to a Justice Department filing. And a couple of departments that were really impacted, HHS, I know that's obviously going to be a big deal there in Atlanta, but also Treasury Department as well. President Trump came out and said when he was talking in the Oval Office in the past couple of days, saying, hey, I'm targeting departments that he believes Democrats like, quote unquote, quote, Democrat-oriented department. So the mass layoffs or reductions in force, or RIFs, as they're shortened down to, could continue. This is something the White House said they're going to promise if this government shutdown continues. So
4,000 people already let go this past weekend. He mentioned HSS, the Health and Human Services. 1,100 to 1,200 workers were let go. That includes the CDC chaos. The Department of Education, 466 workers let go. Housing and urban development, 442,000 workers let go. The Department of Commerce, 315 workers let go. The Department of Energy, 187 workers let go. Homeland Security, 176 workers let go, all from the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA. So 4,200 people Friday night let go after work hours when the media isn't watching. Many of you guys already know, and this is when companies usually do it. This is when also the government does it as well too. Type 4,200 if that's a lot of people in the chat. Type 4,200 in the chat if that's a lot of people. Now, let me show you the Department of Education cuts, because this one hurts. 466 workers were laid off. The Office of Special Education and Rehabilitative Services, gutted. That's the word people use inside. They said they were gutted. The office oversees $15 billion in federal funding for 7.5 million children with disabilities. An education department staffer said, this is devastating for the office tasked with protecting the rights of infants, toddlers, children, and youth with disabilities. 7.5 million kids with disabilities. They need special education services. Federal law guarantees them support. The office that makes sure that schools follow that law, completely gutted. That's what happened. 466 people who monitored $15 billion in funding, gone. That's a lot of layoffs, guys. That's a huge department, especially if you got kids with disabilities who get some sort of assistance. Type kids in the chat if this is big, guys. It's big. Schools will still get the money, but who's checking if they're using it correctly? Who's protecting the kids' rights? Nobody. Well, you would ask Linda McMahon, who's responsible for this department. She said nobody was checking for it in the first place. That's what she said. This is the reason why that group was gutted. The schools are going to get the money, but that department is gone. Now, let me show you what J.D. Vance said on Sunday. Check what J.D. Vance had to say.
I do want to turn to the big news here back at home, the ongoing government shutdown. I want to play you a little bit of what President Trump had to say about shutdowns past when Barack Obama was president. Take a look.
If there is a shutdown, I think it would be a tremendously negative mark on the President of the United States.
They're not going to be talking who the head of the House was, the head of the Senate. I really think the pressure is on the president.
If you were president, what would you do?
Well, very simply, you have to get everybody in a room. You have to be a leader. The president has to lead. You have to get the people in a room, and you have to get a deal.
Mr. Vice President, by President Trump's own calculus, the pressure is on him to get everyone into a room and get a deal, is it not?
Well, Kristen, I wouldn't focus on the political pressure to get a deal. We really don't care what the poll numbers say.
But what about what President Trump said?
What's good for the
What
American
about what
people.
Mr. Trump said, his own words?
Well, Kristen, the president was talking back then when Barack Obama was president about the political realities. We are focused now on the governing realities because we're in power and we're trying to make the American people's government work for the American people, despite the fact that Chuck Schumer and the Democrats have shut down the government. Yeah. We have to step back and remember, Kristen, that there is a clean bill to open the United States government. The vast majority of Republicans and even a few moderate Democrats voted to open the government, but it's Chuck Schumer and the far left of Senate Democrats who have prevented this government from reopening. Now, you talk about negotiation. We're happy to negotiate about any matter. We're happy to talk about health care policy, but not while the government is being held hostage, Christian. This is not abstract. This is not something that's pie in the sky. There are low-income women and children who will not get the food benefits they need to feed their families unless we reopen the government. We're trying to figure out how to pay our troops in the midst of this shutdown to keep our country safe and to make sure that our troops get their payments. We have got to reopen the government, and the president is committed to this. In fact, we've got a bill in the House that already passed the House. We want to make sure that that bill passes the Senate, but not so long as Chuck Schumer allows the entire country to be hijacked by a few far-left senators.
J.D. Vance said, hey, you know what? These guys are trying to hijack the government. He says, you know what? It doesn't matter what President Trump said before. She tried to bring it up on him what Trump said some years ago. He says that was completely different context. Completely different context. Either way, this is what I've been telling you guys from the get-go. They are not working for the people. You have to find it on your own. You have to work on behalf of yourself. Corporations, government. It's the same exact thing. He basically says a little bit later in this conversation, the longer this goes on, the deeper the cuts are going to be. Deeper cuts are coming. And we're on day 13 of the shutdown. Senate votes tomorrow, which is Tuesday. 8th attempt to pass the funding. But Vance is warning, if this keeps going on, more cuts, deeper cuts, permanent cuts. Type deeper in the chats if this is the threat. It's a big threat. I was talking to a good buddy of mine this morning. His family, retired military vets, parents in their late 80s. They're concerned about not getting paid. They're concerned about not getting their benefits. Here's the career lesson here. Your employer can fire you by accident. They could then rehire you 2 days later and call it normal. 700 CDC workers spent the entire weekend updating their resumes, calling family, panicking about mortgages. Sunday night, just kidding, coding error. You cannot depend on systems that fire you by accident. And you definitely can't depend on systems that might fire you on purpose next week. 4,200 workers, Friday night, 7 agencies. And here's the thing, more is coming. If the government can fire disease detectives by coding error and gut special education officers on purpose and warn that deeper cuts are coming, what makes you think your job is safe? That's the question I have for you. What makes you think your job is safe? You just saw government chaos, coding errors, 7.5 million disabled kids losing oversight. Deeper cuts are coming, J.D. Vance warned. Now, let me show you what happens when you trust prestigious company names. Ian Carter, 33 years old, laid off from Microsoft in May. 5 months later, he can't pay his rent. Microsoft is on his resume, guys. Microsoft is a big brand, but it means absolutely nothing. I want you guys to stay with me on this one. Business Insider, they published this over the weekend. Ian Carter, 33 years old, laid off from Microsoft in May of 2025. That's this year. That's 5 months ago. 150 days. 20 weeks ago. He told Business Insider, I'm weeks away from not being able to pay my rent. 5 months. Microsoft on his resume. Can't pay rent. He's moving across the country to live with his family. Now, let me ask you guys something. Microsoft, $3 trillion market cap. One of the richest companies in the world. Created Windows, created Office, created Azure. If you have Microsoft on your resume, you're supposed to be set, right? At least that's what I thought. I thought that. I'm like, man, maybe one day I should work for one of these bigger companies, because if you get something like that on your resume, you're pretty much set. Oracle, Microsoft, Salesforce, Apple. You're set, right? Wrong. Ian's been unemployed for 5 months. Resume says Microsoft doesn't matter. Can't find work. Can't pay rent. What does that basically tell you guys about the job market? It tells you the company name does not save you. Federal workers thought that government jobs were stable. They got fired by coding error. Ian thought Microsoft was stable. Been job hunting for 5 months, going broke. Type broke if that's a reality. Type broke in the chats. Now let me connect this to what happened in the markets. Last week, October the 9th, the markets crashed. S&P 500 was down 2 points. 7%. Worst day since April. NASDAQ was down 3.6%. Dow was down 880 points. $2 trillion in market value gone in one day. Why? President Trump threatened 100% tariffs on China. That's what President Trump did. Okay? Well, Sunday, this weekend, yesterday, Trump posted on Truth Social, "Don't worry about China. It will be all fine." Monday morning, today, futures are rebounding. Dow futures are up 688 points, plus 1.5%. NASDAQ futures 669, plus 2.77%. S&P 500 futures are up 133, plus 2.03%. $2 trillion lost on Thursday, most of it back on Monday. 3 days. That's the stock market that we're in as well, too. And here's the parallel. Market swing $2 trillion in 3 days. Ian's been broke for 5 months. Your 401k lost money on Thursday, gained it back on today. You didn't do anything, nothing at all. You didn't make any adjustments to it. But it was a big swing. But Ian, with a Microsoft resume, 5 months, going broke, still broke. Here's what matters. Oracle certification. Same value on Thursday that we talked about last Thursday as on Monday. Didn't lose 2.7%. AWS certification. Same value before the tariff threat and after. It didn't swing. Data center electrician skills. Same demand Thursday as on Monday. Markets crash, portfolio swing, companies' names fail, but skills stay stable. Now, let me show you someone who figured this out before going broke. Business Insider published this story over the weekend. A student, they don't give their name in the article, got accepted to NYU, New York University, a fine prestige university. Tech-focused master's program, fall 2025. They said this spring, my dreams came true. I was accepted to a tech-focused master's program at NYU. New York University, her dream school, prestigious tech program. But I pivoted at the last second, she says. Instead, she enrolled in a community college, an interpreter course instead. Cost $450 total. NYU would have been over the $100,000 mark to put her in crazy amounts of debt. If you guys are seeing this, type NYU in the chats. Now, let me show you guys the math. NYU prestigious school tech masters, $100,000 plus in loans. Community college, nobody's heard of. $450, no debt. Both teach skills, both lead to work. One leaves you $100,000 in debt, one leaves you debt free. Ian took the prestigious path. He went to Microsoft. Was it worth it? Because of the name. But now he can't pay rent. This student could have taken the prestigious path with NYU. Worth it because of the name? Probably. But she chose $450 instead. And also debt free, especially in this sort of economy. Here's what I want you to understand. Prestige doesn't pay rent. Skills do.